Hello, welcome back. It's Sunday, May 31st, the afternoon, and we're going to look at algorithms. So I've added to your learning path in week 6 a link for Flowgorith. And what this is it is an application that represents a program in a diagram. Okay, now it's not a serious programming tool. It's intended just to make the subject fun, and we just use it for learning only. So once you've connected to flowgorith.org, you go to download, and you download the 64-bit version of this program if you are able. So go ahead and download it. After it's downloaded, the file, if you see here at the bottom, it's a zip file, ZIP. Now, if you're using Windows 10, you should be able to access it. If you're using an older operating system and you cannot access it, let me know. So don't just click on it right there. Instead, click that arrow. Okay, do you see that arrow? And we want to show in the folder. So it's going to open up. There it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unzip it. A zip file is one file that contains other files inside it. It could be just 2 or 3, or it could be hundreds of files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it, and if you're using Windows 10, you will have something called Extract All in the menu. If you don't have Windows 10, you might need to download and install something called 7-zip to be able to do the same thing. But if you have Windows 10, there's no problem. Just right click on the file and do an extract all, and we extract. Okay, and it turns out we only have 2 files in there. So just double click on this setup.exe and follow the instructions to install. After it's installed, this is what you will see. Okay, so this is a way of graphically representing our program, and it does everything that we looked at so far in Python. We can create an if statement, we can create a for loop, a while loop, we can create functions. So let's go back to the website and click on documentation for all the instructions on what to do. So you can see here data types, basic data types. If you click on it, you can see that it supports floats. They call them real numbers. It just means decimals. Strings, Boolean, true or false. And we have the full list here, including integers. So there isn't a lot in this tool. It's very basic, but it's enough for us to get started with algorithms. And you can see there are various shapes that are supported. So for instance, the if statement, if I click on it, the shape for that is a diamond. If, however, I want to do a for loop, so we'll click on for. It is this shape here. Okay, it's I don't know what I would call the shape, but that's what it would look like. And here is an example of a for loop inside the program. So let's go ahead and try this out now. So remember that Mary started with an income of $85,000, and she works for a company where you get a raise every year of 15%. So after the first year, she gets 15%. After the second year, she gets another 15%, up to a maximum of $150,000. So that is the maximum you can earn in that particular company. So she's starting off at 85,000. Every year her income is going to go up by a certain amount up to the maximum of 150,000. And the question was, how long will it take for Mary to reach that maximum? And if you remember, we used a while loop for that. So let's go ahead and click on while. Okay, and the while loop is the same shape as a for loop because we are looping. We're going in a circle. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this now. Okay, so let's start off by declaring Mary's income to be 85,000. Now we do this a little bit different in Python. In Python, you just write income equals 85,000. Python will look at the number and it will know right away, is this an integer? Is this a float? Many other programming languages, you can't do that. First, you have to declare whether it's an integer, float, or string. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we just added a shape. Let me show you how I did that again. Okay, you go to the arrow in between the start and end and just double click the arrow. And then you pick the shape you want. Now we're declaring a variable here for the income. So click declare. It puts it in there. It's gray. That means you have to add information when it's gray. I'm going to double click on it. And what kind of value is an income? Well, it could be a real number, but really the best value here is an integer. You can also see that we have strings and Boolean. We'll just stick with integer for now, and we'll give it a meaningful name. We'll call it income and press OK. So we've declared it. Now we're going to initialize it. We're going to start Mary at 85,000. So we enter the program up here. We have an arrow that goes to the next step, declare Mary's income as an integer. And then the next step is to initialize it at 85,000. So I'm going to click on the next arrow, and that is the next box. So what can you do with variables? You can declare the data type, integer, variable, integer, string, whatever the case may be, and then you give it a value. That's called assigning. So let's double click on that. It's gray, so we have to do something. So we will give the income an initial value of 85,000. And just in case you forgot the name of the variable, just push it aside and remind yourself, here's the name, income. So let's call it income. And income equals 85,000. Okay, so that's what she starts at. So let's click OK. And you can see here, so we've declared it as an integer and we've initialized it. We gave it its first value of 85,000. We are now ready for the for loop. So go to the next step, go to the next arrow, and double click. Now, which shape do we need now? We need this shape here because we're looping. Now, we've looked at a while loop and a for loop. A do loop is the same as a while loop. Okay, it's just almost identical, so don't let that bother you. You're not missing anything. Let's go ahead and choose a while loop. Okay, now we're going to put a condition in here. Okay, while the income is less than 85,000, keep increasing it. Keep looping. Okay, so let's go ahead and double click on the while loop. Okay, and we're going to put an expression in here. So while income is less than 150,000, we are going to keep looping. And every time we loop, we're going to increase the income by 15%. So here's this circular or looping arrow. So we're going to double click on that now. Oops, I made a mistake there. Let me delete that. I'm going to double click on it once, And what am I going to do? I'm going to change the value of income. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose assign. Assign means change the value of something. So let's go ahead and click on that. Let me zoom out a bit. You can see that you can zoom in and zoom out. I'm going to click on assign because it's gray. It means I have to do something. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the value of income. So income, got to spell it right, income equals whatever it was before, multiplied, and we use the star for multiplied, by 1.15. Okay, 15%. So we're going to loop, and every time we loop, we're going to increase the income by 15% until we reach the maximum of 115, and then we're going to exit out. Okay, but how many times did we loop? Well, we need a counter for that. So before looping, we're going to add another variable. Let's go ahead and double click on this arrow up here before the loop, before the for loop, and we're going to add now another variable called counter. Okay, this is going to count for us. Make sure you set it to an integer, and now we're going to initialize it to 0. So we use an assignment, double click, so counter equals 0. Okay, so this is the number of years. In case you forget the variable name, just push it over and you'll see the name right there. Okay, so counter equals 0. So we enter the loop, and every time we enter the loop, we add 1 to the counter. Okay, so let's click here, choose assign, and then we do counter equals counter plus 1. Okay, and then when we're finished, we're going to exit the loop with this last arrow here. All we need to do is output the information. So to output, here you can get user input, and this one here output. So this is like the print statement, and this is like the raw input statement in Python. So right now we want to output or print the result. So we click on that, and what do we want to print out? The number of years. So that's a string. So you reach max salary or max income in how many years? How many years? Okay, and then what variable are we using? Counter. Now we need to concatenate or put the two together. In Python we used plus. Here we use the ampersand, and if you go through the documentation, it will tell you what to write. So we click OK, and let's see if it works. Now we just go ahead and run it, and we see you reach the maximum income in 5 years. Now, here is the beauty. Well, we need a space there after the word year, so let's go back in there again and just put a space in there. Now, here's the beauty of this program. You can step through it. So if I come over here to layout windows, okay, I have all these different layouts. So I can follow the variables and the code, the algorithm. I can follow the code and the algorithm. I can have the console and the code. So you have different things you can display. Let me choose this one right here, and let's step through it. So let's go ahead and click the step button, which is this one right here. We've entered our code. We see nothing here in our variables. Let's step again. Okay, so income is uninitialized. Step again. We see we start at 85,000. Step again. So you can see where you are in the algorithm and what's happening. We've initialized it, and now I'm going to click really fast until we get to the end. So we're up to 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and here's the result. I stepped through it 1 year at a time.